Hey guys, tonight we're wandering into the sun-scorched hills of ancient Greece, where jagged mountains and glittering seas carve a world of fierce, independent city-states. Picture yourself perched on a rocky outcrop, the air thick with olive grove dust, watching tiny walled cities gleam like scattered jewels below. Each one's a universe, proud, stubborn, and ready to brawl over a stolen goat or a bad trade deal. Why did Greece fracture into these rival pockets instead of uniting like some tidy empire? Spoiler, you probably won't survive the politics of this place, with its backstabbing assemblies and spear-sharpening neighbors. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start your trek across Greece's unforgiving landscape, where geography plays a cruel trick on unity. The mainland is a labyrinth of craggy peaks and narrow valleys, splitting communities like a shattered clay pot. To your left, the Peloponnese juts out, its ridges cradling Sparta's militaristic sprawl. To your right, Attica's plains hug Athens, a hub of chatter and ideas. These natural barriers, mountains, rivers, and gulfs, make overland travel a sweaty nightmare. You'd need weeks to haul goods or troops from one valley to another, dodging bandits and rock slides. So, each city digs in, building walls and loyalties as thick as the stone beneath your feet. The sea's no kinder. It's a sapphire trap. Islands like Crete or Rhodes breed their own stubborn cultures, isolated by waves that sink careless sailors. Even nearby cities, like Corinth and Argos, squabble over slivers of coastline, their ships glaring across the water. Historians point to this rugged terrain as a key driver of Greece's fragmentation. By 800 BCE, the land's natural divisions had birthed hundreds of polis, city-states, each with its own government, laws, and grudges. Some, like Thebes, clung to fertile plains. Others, like Miletus, thrived on coastal trade. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some polis were so small they barely qualified as towns, with populations under 1,000. Yet they still strutted around like mini empires, minting coins and picking fights. Historians still argue whether geography alone explains this splintering, or if cultural quirks, like a love for local pride, fan the flames. You feel it standing here. The land itself whispers, "Stay small, stay separate." Now, imagine you're a farmer in one of these valleys. Your world is your polis, its agora buzzing with gossip, its temples smoky with offerings. Loyalty isn't to some far-off king. It's to your neighbors who'll grab spears if the next valley's warriors come sniffing. This hyper-local vibe shapes everything. Cities don't just differ in laws, their accents, festivals, even bread recipes scream us, not them. You chuckle at a bizarre custom in one polis, where they smear goat fat on statues for luck. Good luck cleaning that up. But it's not all quaint. Rivalries simmer. A stolen harvest or a dammed river sparks decades of bad blood. You're starting to see why Greece isn't a nation yet, just a patchwork of egos. The mountains don't just block roads, they block trust. You hear merchants grumble about tariffs at every pass, each city milking travelers for coin. It's a wonder anyone trades at all. Yet, this isolation breeds ingenuity. Cut off, each place hones its own strengths. Corinth's pottery, Athens' philosophy, Sparta's fists. You smirk, thinking of modern rush hour traffic. At least we don't stab each other over parking spots. Or do we? As you gaze across this fractured land, you sense the paradox. Greece's disunity is its strength, forging a civilization as diverse as it is chaotic. The sun dips low, casting shadows over the hills. You're ready to dig deeper into the rivalries that make this place tick. You're trudging through the dusty trails of ancient Greece now, the echoes of rival city-states still ringing from those jagged mountains behind you. The air's thick with the scent of wild thyme, and you can almost hear the clatter of bronze from distant forges. You're diving into the tribal roots of these polis, where old bloodlines and older grudges set the stage for a civilization that's as much about rivalry as it is about brilliance. Forget any dreams of a united Greece. The seeds of division were sown long before anyone carved a marble statue. Picture yourself in the Bronze Age, around 1600 BCE, when Greece wasn't yet Greece. You're surrounded by scattered tribes, Mycenaeans mostly, clustered in villages, each swearing loyalty to their own chieftain. These aren't the polished city-states you saw in the last valley. They're raw, scrappy groups, tied by kinship, grazing their goats and guarding their turf. The Mycenaeans built hulking fortresses, like the Lion Gate at Mycenae. Their stones so massive, you wonder if giants hauled them. These strongholds scream power, but also paranoia. Every tribe's watching its neighbor. A mainstream fact anchors this. By 1200 BCE, the Mycenaean world collapsed, likely from invasions or internal strife, leaving a dark age of chaos. Tribes scattered, and when the dust settled, they regrouped into tighter, more isolated communities, the embryos of city-states. You pause by a crumbling wall, imagining the tribal feuds that survived this collapse. Each valley's clan clung to its own dialect, rituals, and heroes. You smirk at a quirky tidbit. Some tribes claim descent from gods like Hercules, puffing their chests as if Zeus himself signed their family tree. This wasn't just pride, it was a weapon. Claiming divine roots gave a tribe, or later, a polis, bragging rights to lord over others. Athens might boast Athena's favor. Argos countered with Hera's. These mythic rivalries hardened into political ones, each group desperate to outshine the rest. Historians still argue whether these tribal divisions were more cultural or economic. Did they fight over stories or resources? You suspect it's both, tangled like grapevines. Now, fast forward to the Archaic period, around 800 BCE. You're in a bustling protopolis, its mud brick homes packed tight. The tribes have evolved, but their old loyalties linger. You see families, clans, really, running the show. Their elders deciding who marries, who fights, who eats. These clans don't play nice with outsiders. If a neighboring valley's tribe raids your olive groves, it's not just theft, it's a blood feud. You chuckle, thinking of modern family reunions. Imagine those, but with spears. This clannish mindset shapes the polis. Even as cities formalize, with laws and councils, the old tribal vibe persists. Citizens identify as Spartan or Corinthian before Greek, their loyalty as fierce as a mother boar. You wander into the agora, where merchants hawk pottery and fish. You overhear gossip about a rival polis damming a shared river. Classic move. It's not just resources, it's pride. Each city's desperate to prove its way of life is best. Some, like Thebes, lean on farming and tradition. Others, like Miletus, chase trade and new ideas. This competition drives progress, but also pettiness. You grin at the thought of two cities arguing over who throws a better harvest festival, like a Bronze Age Instagram feud. Yet, this tribal legacy makes unity a pipe dream. Why share power when your ancestors swore you're the chosen ones? As you leave the agora, the sun's dipping low, painting the hills gold. You feel the weight of those ancient grudges, each polis a tribe, writ large, ready to clash over honor or a stray cow. The rivalries you saw in the landscape last time, they're rooted here in blood and memory. You're itching to see how these tensions play out in a city obsessed with war. Sparta's waiting just over the next ridge. You're now trekking toward Sparta, the air heavy with pine and the distant clang of iron. Those tribal rivalries you felt in the last valley, they're about to get a lot sharper. Sparta's a city-state that doesn't just embrace war, it worships it, forging a society so brutal you're glad you're just passing through. The mountains of the Peloponnese loom like silent sentinels, and you sense the discipline radiating from the polis ahead. This is where tribal pride and military obsession collide, shaping a city that's as feared as it is peculiar. You step into Sparta's world around 700 BCE, where life revolves around one goal: creating unbreakable warriors. Picture yourself watching a group of boys, barely 7, ripped from their mothers and marched into the Agoge, Sparta's grueling training system. They're not learning poetry or math. They're wrestling in the dirt, starving for days to build grit, and dodging whips from trainers who don't smile. A mainstream historical fact grounds this. By adolescence, these boys were molded into hoplites, heavy infantry whose phalanx formation, shields locked, spears bristling, crushed enemies like a bronze tidal wave. Sparta's army was Greece's gold standard, undefeated for centuries. You wince, imagining the bruises those kids endure. Modern boot camps got nothing on this. But here's a quirky tidbit that makes you raise an eyebrow. Spartan boys were encouraged to steal food to survive training, but if caught, they'd be flogged, not for stealing, but for being sloppy. It's like a twisted survival game, teaching cunning alongside courage. You chuckle, picturing a kid swiping a loaf only to trip over a sandal. Busted. This ruthless system wasn't just about strength. It was about loyalty to Sparta above all. Historians still argue whether the Agoge was pure genius or borderline sadistic. Did it build invincible soldiers or break too many souls? You're leaning toward both as you watch a scarred veteran drill recruits nearby. You wander deeper into Sparta, past mud brick barracks where even the wealthy live like monks. Unlike Athens, with its chatty agora, Sparta's eerily quiet. Everyone's either training, fighting, or plotting the next war. You notice the women, too, are tough as nails, trained in wrestling and running to bear strong children. They're not just moms. They're the backbone of this war machine, shouting at husbands to come back with your shield or on it. You smirk, thinking of your own gym routine. Maybe you'd skip leg day here. Sparta's obsession with military might stems from its tribal roots, that us versus them mentality you saw last time. They don't just want to win, they need to dominate, especially their neighbors in Messenia, whom they enslaved as helots to work the fields. Those helots are Sparta's dark secret. You glimpse them toiling under the sun, outnumbering Spartans 10-1. They're not just laborers, they're a constant threat, ready to revolt if the warriors blink. This fear drives Sparta's paranoia, justifying the Agoge's cruelty. Every Spartan male's a soldier, because every day's a potential siege. You feel the tension in the air, like a bowstring pulled taut. It's no wonder Sparta shuns trade or philosophy. Why bother when survival's at stake? You laugh softly, imagining a Spartan at a poetry slam. He'd probably spear the podium. As you leave Sparta's austere streets, the Eurotas River glints under the moon. You're struck by how the city's forged an identity so fierce it overshadows the rest of Greece. Those tribal grudges from before, Sparta's turned them into a lifestyle, but not every polis worships war. Across the mountains, Athens is brewing something wilder, a risky bet on democracy. You're ready to trade Sparta's grim discipline for a city buzzing with ideas, even if it's just as cutthroat in its own way. You're leaving Sparta's stark valleys behind, the weight of its warrior code fading as you cross the rugged hills toward Athens. The air softens, carrying the tang of sea salt and the hum of a city alive with chatter. You're stepping into Athens around 600 BCE, where the tribal rivalries and geographic fractures you've seen now spark a bold experiment: democracy. This isn't the spear-sharpening world of Sparta. Here, words are weapons, and the polis pulses with ideas, ambition, and no small amount of chaos. You're about to see why Athens bets on the voice of its people, though trust me, it's not as noble as it sounds. Picture yourself in the heart of Athens, standing in the Agora, a sprawling marketplace where merchants hawk figs and potters argue over prices. Around you, men, sorry, no women or slaves allowed, gather on a rocky hill called the Pnyx, shouting over who should lead or what law to pass. This is democracy's cradle, rough and rowdy. A mainstream historical fact anchors this. Around 508 BCE, Cleisthenes, a crafty aristocrat, reforms Athens's government, giving citizens a direct vote in the assembly. It's not perfect. Only freeborn Athenian males count. But it's a radical leap, letting regular Joes, from fishermen to smiths, shape the polis. You feel the energy, like a town hall, meeting with higher stakes and worse haircuts. But here's a quirky tidbit that makes you grin. To keep power-hungry types in check, Athenians invented ostracism, where citizens could vote to exile someone for 10 years by scratching names on broken pottery shards called ostraka. Imagine getting banished because your neighbor didn't like your face. Petty, but effective. You chuckle, thinking of modern cancel culture. At least we don't ship people to Crete. Historians still argue whether this early democracy empowered the masses or just swapped one elite for another. Did Cleisthenes really care about the people? Or was he playing a long game for his own clan? You suspect he wasn't above a little showmanship. As you wander the agora, You see, Athens' democracy isn't just politics, it's a mindset. Unlike Sparta's rigid hierarchy, Athenians prize debate, even if it's messy. You overhear two bearded guys arguing about taxes. One's waving a loaf of bread for emphasis, the other's red-faced over harbor fees. This openness fuels creativity. Sculptors chisel gods in marble. Poets scribble plays, and philosophers like Socrates start asking annoying questions about truth. You smirk, imagining Socrates at a modern coffee shop, pestering baristas about the meaning of decaf. But this freedom comes with a catch. Athens' democratic pride makes it cocky, eager to flex its navy or snub rivals like Corinth. Those tribal roots you saw earlier, they're here, just dressed in fancier togas. You pause by a temple, its columns half built, and notice the flip side. Democracy doesn't erase division, it amplifies it. Wealthy aristocrats still pull strings, and the poor grumble about being outvoted. Slaves, nearly a third of the city, haul water and build ships, invisible to the free assembly. You feel the tension, like a rope fraying under strain. Athens' experiment is fragile, and its rivals know it. Sparta's probably sneering from afar, sharpening spears, while Athenians bicker over budgets. You laugh softly, thinking of your own group chats, blowing up over nothing. Some things never change. As you leave the agora, the Acropolis looms above, its future Parthenon just a dream for now. Athens' gamble on democracy sets it apart, but it's still a city-state, loyal to itself, not Greece. The rivalries you've traced, from geography's divides to tribal feuds, are now political, with Athens strutting as the brainy upstart. You're curious how these cities, so different, survive in a world of trade and treachery. The ports are calling where wealth and conflict brew in equal measure. You're now strolling toward the bustling ports of Greece, the Aegean salty breeze tugging at your tunic as you leave Athens's noisy agora behind. The clatter of democracy fades, replaced by the creak of ships and the shouts of traders haggling over amphorae of wine. You're diving into the economic lifeblood of the city-states, where trade fuels wealth, envy, and endless squabbles. Those tribal rivalries and geographic splits you've traced, they're about to get a new edge, sharpened by coin and ambition. The ports are where Greece's fractured soul meets the wider world, and it's not always pretty. Picture yourself in Corinth's harbor around 600 BCE, where triremes bob like restless horses, their oars slicing the turquoise waves. Corinth straddles the isthmus linking the Peloponnese to mainland Greece, a geographic jackpot that makes it a trade hub. A mainstream historical fact grounds this. By controlling this narrow strip, Corinth taxed goods moving between the Ionian and Aegean seas, raking in wealth that funded its temples and warships. You watch merchants unload Phoenician glass and Egyptian grain, their accents clashing like the goods they barter. It's an ancient version of a stock exchange, chaotic and cutthroat. You smirk, thinking of your own online shopping cart. Less piracy, thankfully. But here's a quirky tidbit that catches your ear. Corinth was so trade obsessed, it ran a sacred prostitution racket at its temple of Aphrodite, where devotees allegedly earned the city extra coin. True or not, the rumor made rivals like Athens roll their eyes, calling Corinth a glorified bazaar with loose morals. You chuckle, imagining the Yelp reviews. Great pottery, sketchy temple vibes. Historians still argue whether Corinth's wealth came more from trade or its knack for exploiting every opportunity. Did its ports make it rich, or was it sheer hustle? You're betting on both as you dodge a cart piled with olives. Wander the docks, and you see why trade stokes rivalries. Every polis wants a slice of the sea. Athens, with its nearby Piraeus port, builds a navy to protect its grain routes from Black Sea colonies. Miletus, across the Aegean, spins wealth from wool and ideas, its philosophers as famous as its markets. But wealth breeds jealousy. You overhear a Corinthian captain griping about Athenian tariffs. Sound familiar from those mountain passes? Cities don't just compete, they sabotage, slapping embargoes or sinking pirate ships that conveniently fly a rival's flag. You grin, picturing a Greek version of corporate espionage, complete with shady middlemen and doctored ledgers. This economic race shapes identities. Corinth's flashy pottery floods markets, each vase a flex of craftsmanship. Athens leans on its silver mines, minting owl-stamped coins that scream prestige. Even Sparta, that grim warrior state you visited, can't ignore trade entirely. Its helots farm barley for export, though they'd rather die than admit it. You feel the tension in every transaction. A bad deal or a sunken cargo can spark war. Remember those tribal feuds over stolen goats? Now it's stolen trade routes with higher stakes. You laugh softly, thinking of modern trade wars. Same drama, fewer togas. As you leave the harbor, the sun glints off the water, casting shadows over crates and sails. Trade binds these city-states to the world, but also pulls them apart, each polis chasing its own fortune. The rivalries you've seen, geographic, tribal, political, are now economic, with every coin a potential casus belli. You're curious how these cities find any common ground. Up ahead, the flicker of temple fires hints at something bigger: religion, a force that might unite them or just add fuel to the fire. You're drifting away from the noisy ports now, the sea's briny tang fading as you climb toward a hilltop crowned with a temple. The air hums with incense and the low chant of priests, pulling you into the spiritual heart of ancient Greece. Those economic rivalries and clashing ambitions you saw in Corinth's docks, they don't vanish here, but they tangle with something deeper. Religion, a force that both binds and fractures the city-states. You're about to uncover how shared gods create a paradox, uniting Greeks in worship while fueling the same old grudges. It's a divine soap opera, and you've got a front row seat. Picture yourself in Delphi around 600 BCE, standing before the oracle sanctuary, its marble columns glowing under the sun. Greeks from every polis, Sparta, Athens, Thebes, make pilgrimages here, offering gold or goats to Apollo for cryptic advice. A mainstream historical fact anchors this. The Delphic oracle was Greece's spiritual GPS, guiding decisions from war to marriage, its priestess muttering riddles that shaped city-state policies. You watch a nervous Athenian envoy clutch a laurel branch, hoping for a prophecy that'll outsmart Corinth. The air's thick with awe, but also calculation. Everyone's angling for a divine edge. You smirk, thinking of checking your horoscope before a big meeting. Same vibe, less goat sacrifice. Here's a quirky tidbit that makes you blink. Some Greeks believe the oracle's trance came from inhaling fumes from a chasm beneath the temple, like she was huffing sacred vapors. Modern geologists say there might have been ethylene gas seeping up. Basically, the god's will was a geological burp. You chuckle, picturing a priestess high on fumes, babbling about Sparta's next war. Historians still argue whether the oracle's influence unified Greece or just amplified rivalries. Did shared faith bridge divides, or did cities twist prophecies to justify their agendas? You're leaning toward the latter as you see envoys eyeing each other like rival CEOs at a conference. Step into the festival at Olympia, another sacred hotspot, and you feel the tension. Every 4 years, city-states call a truce for the Olympic Games, honoring Zeus with races and sacrifices. You see a Corinthian sprinter glare at an Athenian rival, their cities' trade disputes simmering beneath the cheers. Religion pulls Greeks together, shared gods, shared rituals, but it's no kumbaya moment. Each polis builds its own temples, claims its own patron deity. Athens worships Athena. Sparta leans on Artemis. Remember those tribal myths about divine ancestry? They're back, with cities boasting their god's favor, like it's a cosmic Yelp rating. You grin, imagining Athens tweeting, "Athena says we're number one. Suck it, Thebes. Yet, religion's also a battleground. You hear whispers of a polis desecrating a rival's shrine, scandalous, like keying a neighbor's car. Thebes and Plataea, practically next door neighbors, bicker over festival rites, each claiming Zeus loves them more. Even Delphi's neutrality isn't pure. Its priests favor big donors, and everyone knows it. You feel the irony. The gods demand unity, but their worship fuels the same pride and pettiness you saw in markets and assemblies. It's like a family reunion where everyone prays together, then fights over the last olive. You laugh softly, thinking of modern fan bases clashing over their idols. Same energy, fewer statues. As you leave the temple, the sun dips low, casting long shadows over the altar. Religion's a thread, weaving Greece's city-states together, but it's frayed by the same rivalries. Geographic, tribal, economic, you've traced. The gods might be shared, but their blessings are a zero-sum game. You're curious how these tensions explode when pride turns to bloodshed. The battlefield's calling, where hoplites and city honor clash in a brutal dance. You're stepping away from the sacred glow of Delphi's temple now, the scent of incense fading as you descend into a dusty plain where the air crackles with a different energy. War. The rivalries you've traced through Greece's mountains, tribes, ports, and shrines are about to erupt in bronze and blood. You're plunging into the world of hoplite warfare, where city-states like Sparta, Athens, and Thebes forge their identities through battle. This isn't just fighting, it's a brutal ritual of pride, and you're right in the thick of it, hearing the clank of shields and the roar of men charging for glory. Picture yourself on a battlefield around 600 BCE, standing behind a phalanx, a wall of hoplites, their round shields locked, spears gleaming like a porcupine's quills. You're in the shadow of a polis, maybe Argos, facing off against Corinth over a disputed border. A mainstream historical fact grounds this. Hoplite warfare, with its tightly packed formations, defined Greek combat from the 7th century BCE, turning citizen soldiers, farmers, potters, merchants into a disciplined killing machine. You feel the ground shake as the lines clash, bronze armor glinting under the sun. It's not chaos, it's choreography, each man trusting the shield of the guy next to him. You wince, imagining the blisters from that heavy gear. Your gym's treadmill looks cozy now. Here's a quirky tidbit that makes you blink. Some hoplites went into battle with a pet lizard or snake, believing it brought luck or scared enemies. Picture a Spartan with a viper curled around his spear, hissing at the enemy. Talk about psychological warfare. You chuckle, thinking of modern soldiers with lucky socks, At least those don't bite. Historians still argue whether hoplite battles were more about honor than strategy. Did cities fight to prove their grit, or were they grabbing land and loot? You suspect it's both as you watch a Theban captain rally his men, shouting about their city's sacred pride. You shift your gaze across the plain, where dust clouds rise like ghosts. Battles aren't just about winning, they're about defining who a policies is. Victory means bragging rights, Sparta's unbeatable aura, Athens' naval swagger. Defeat stings worse than death. It's a blow to the city's soul. You hear veterans boast of Marathon, where Athens crushed Persia in 490 BC. A win they'll milk for centuries. But these wars also deepen divides. Cities don't just fight outsiders, they brawl with each other over slights you've seen before. A stolen trade route, a desecrated shrine, or just tribal bad blood. Remember that river damming spat from the tribal days? Now it's a full-on siege, with catapults and curses flying. You notice the aftermath, too. Fields trampled, widows weeping in the polis. Yet, even in defeat, cities cling to their identity. A Corinthian prisoner spits at his captors, proud despite his chains. This stubbornness fuels the cycle. War. Truce. War again. You smirk, thinking of modern sports rivalries. Imagine if your team's loss meant burning your city's flag. The stakes here are higher, but the passion's familiar. Every clash, from small skirmishes to the epic Peloponnesian War, brewing on the horizon, carves each polis deeper into its own myth. Athens isn't just a city, it's the navy that broke Zaire. You're stepping away from the sacred glow of Delphi's temple now, the scent of incense fading as you descend into a dusty plain where the air crackles with a different energy. War. The rivalries you've traced through Greece's mountains, tribes, ports, and shrines are about to erupt in bronze and blood. You're plunging into the world of hoplite warfare, where city-states like Sparta, Athens, and Thebes forge their identities through battle. This isn't just fighting, it's a brutal ritual of pride, and you're right in the thick of it, hearing the clank of shields and the roar of men charging for glory. Picture yourself on a battlefield around 600 BCE, standing behind a phalanx, a wall of hoplites, their round shields locked, spears gleaming like a porcupine's quills. You're in the shadow of a polis, maybe Argos, facing off against Corinth over a disputed border. A mainstream historical fact grounds this. Hoplite warfare, with its tightly packed formations, defined Greek combat from the 7th century BCE, turning citizen soldiers, farmers, potters, merchants into a disciplined killing machine. You feel the ground shake as the lines clash, bronze armor glinting under the sun. It's not chaos, it's choreography. Each man trusting the shield of the guy next to him. You wince, imagining the blisters from that heavy gear. Your gym's treadmill looks cozy now. Here's a quirky tidbit that makes you blink. Some hoplites went into battle with a pet lizard or snake, believing it brought luck or scared enemies. Picture a Spartan with a viper curled around his spear, hissing at the enemy. Talk about psychological warfare. You chuckle, thinking of modern soldiers with lucky socks. At least those don't bite. Historians still argue whether hoplite battles were more about honor than strategy. Did cities fight to prove their grit? Or were they grabbing land and loot? You suspect it's both, as you watch a Theban captain rally his men, shouting about their city's sacred pride. You shift your gaze across the plain, where dust clouds rise like ghosts. Battles aren't just about winning. They're about defining who a polis is. Victory means bragging rights. Sparta's unbeatable aura. Athens' naval swagger. Defeat stings worse than death. It's a blow to the city's soul. You hear veterans boast of Marathon, where Athens crushed Persia in 490 BCE. A win they'll milk for centuries. But these wars also deepen divides. Cities don't just fight outsiders. They brawl with each other over slights you've seen before. A stolen trade route, a desecrated shrine, or just tribal bad blood. Remember that river damming spat from the tribal days? Now it's a full-on siege, with catapults and curses flying. You notice the aftermath too. Fields trampled, widows weeping in the polis. Yet, even in defeat, cities cling to their identity. A Corinthian prisoner spits at his captors, proud despite his chains. This stubbornness fuels the cycle. War, truce, war again. You smirk, thinking of modern sports rivalries. Imagine if your team's loss meant burning your city's flag. The stakes here are higher, but the passion's familiar. Every clash, from small skirmishes to the epic Peloponnesian War brewing on the horizon, carves each polis deeper into its own myth. Athens isn't just a city. It's the navy that broke Xerxes. Sparta's the shield wall no one cracks. As you leave the battlefield, the sun sinking, painting the sky crimson like spilled wine. The rivalries you followed, geographic, tribal, economic, religious, are crystallized here, each polis wielding war to prove it's the best. But pride makes strange bedfellows. You're curious how these cities, so ready to stab each other, ever manage to team up. Alliances are next, fragile as a potter's clay, and you're ready to see how they hold or shatter under the weight of ambition. You're moving away from the blood-soaked battlefield now. the din of clashing shields fading as you wander toward a quieter grove where envoys from rival city-states gather under a truce. The air's thick with olive blossom and suspicion, the weight of war still lingering like dust on your sandals. You're diving into the shaky world of Greek alliances, where polis like Athens, Sparta, and Corinth try to band together against common threats, or just to stab each other in the back later. Those rivalries you've traced through terrain, tribes, trade, and temples, they make unity a tightrope walk, and you're about to see how ambition and betrayal snap even the tightest bonds. Picture yourself in 500 BCE, standing in a shaded clearing where diplomats from across Greece haggle over a pact. The Persian Empire looms, its armies eyeing the Aegean like a hungry wolf. A mainstream historical fact grounds this. The Hellenic League, formed around 481 BCE, united dozens of city-states, including bitter rivals Athens and Sparta, to fend off Xerxes' invasion. You watch an Athenian orator, all flowery words and smug grins, promise ships while a Spartan general grunts, barely hiding his distrust. It's a marriage of convenience, not love. Think of it as a group project where everyone hates the team but needs the grade. You smirk, recalling your own awkward collaborations. At least nobody brought a spear. Here's a quirky tidbit that raises your brow. Some alliances were sealed with bizarre rituals, like sacrificing a pig and smearing its blood on shields to curse traitors. Imagine the cleanup and the smell. You chuckle, picturing a modern contract signing with that kind of flair. Historians still argue whether these leagues were true partnerships or just power plays. Did cities join for Greece or to outmaneuver their neighbors? You're betting on the latter as you catch a Corinthian envoy whispering about undercutting Athens' navy once Persia's gone. Step closer and you see why alliances are so fragile. Each polis is a diva, loyal to its own walls first. Remember those tribal roots, that us versus them vibe? It's here, dressed in diplomacy. Athens pushes its democratic swagger, irritating oligarchic Sparta. Corinth, still sore about trade spats from the ports, demands a bigger say. You feel the tension, like a dinner party where everyone's polite but clutching knives under the table. The league holds against Persia, barely, winning at Salamis and Plataea. But victory just sharpens old grudges. You hear whispers of Athens hogging the glory, taxing allies to build its shiny Parthenon. Sparta's already sharpening its spears, muttering about disloyalty. Wander to a later meeting around 460 BCE, and it's worse. The Delian League, led by Athens, starts as a Persian defense pact, but morphs into an Athenian empire. You see smaller palays, like Naxos, try to quit, only to get crushed by Athenian triremes. It's less alliance than protection racket. You grin, thinking of modern group chats, where one person steamrolls the plan. Same energy, higher body count. Betrayals pile up. Sparta forms its own Peloponnesian League, and soon Athens and Sparta are at each other's throats, their old unity a fading memory. Every polis wants to be the hero, not the sidekick, and that pride, geographic, economic, religious, keeps them from lasting trust. As you leave the grove, the moon casts shadows over the envoy's tents. Alliances are Greece's attempt to rise above its fractures, but they're built on sand. The rivalries you've followed now wear the mask of diplomacy, only to unravel when ambition calls. You're curious how these cities channel their egos into something brighter, culture, where art and ideas become the next battleground. The festivals are calling, and you're ready to see what happens when pride turns to poetry. You're slipping away from the tense whispers of the envoy's grove now, the sting of betrayal still hanging in the air as you head toward a vibrant festival ground. The scent of roasted lamb and myrtle wreaths pulls you forward, mingling with the strum of lyres and the roar of a crowd. You're stepping into the cultural arena of ancient Greece, where city-states like Athens, Corinth, and Delphi channel their rivalries into art, theater, and games. Those fractures, geographic, tribal, economic, religious, you've traced through wars and shaky alliances. They don't vanish here. They spark a dazzling contest of creativity where pride fuels brilliance. You're about to see how competition breeds a legacy that outshines bronze spears. Picture yourself at the Great Dionysia in Athens, around 450 BCE, where thousands pack a stone amphitheater under the Acropolis. Playwrights like Sophocles and Aeschylus stage tragedies, their actors' masks amplifying tales of gods and hubris. A mainstream historical fact anchors this. The Dionysia, a religious festival honoring Dionysus, was also a cultural flex, with Athens showcasing its poetic and dramatic prowess to visiting dignitaries from rival polis. You watch a chorus chant about Oedipus's doom, the crowd gasping as if it's news. Athens isn't just entertaining, it's proclaiming our art's the best. You feel the buzz, like a modern film festival where every city's pitching its Oscar contender. Here's a quirky tidbit that makes you grin. Some festivals included a contest for dithyrambs, over-the-top choral odes, where 50 men, dressed as satyrs, danced and sang about wine or goats. Picture a Spartan delegation watching this, stone-faced, probably itching for their spears. You chuckle, imagining them muttering, "This is why we stick to wrestling." Historians still argue whether these cultural contests unified Greeks or just gave them new ways to one-up each other. Did shared art bridge divides, or was it another battlefield? You're leaning toward the latter as you see a Corinthian poet scowl when Athens sweeps the prizes. Wander to the Olympic Games, and the rivalries even clearer. You're back in Olympia, where you felt religion's pull earlier, but now it's 476 BCE, and athletes from every polis compete for Zeus's glory and their cities. A Theban runner edges out an Athenian, and you hear the Theban crowd chant their polis name like it's a war cry. Each victory's a point on an invisible scoreboard. Cities don't just send jocks, they send sculptors, like Phidias, whose colossal Zeus statue at Olympia screams, "We're the classiest." You smirk, thinking of modern cities, bragging about their skylines. Same ego, less marble. This cultural race isn't just for show, it's identity. Athens pours coin into theater, birthing plays we still read. Corinth churns out pottery so fine it's traded to Egypt. Even Sparta, grim as ever, sends poets to Delphi's Pythian games, though their verses probably glorify push-ups. You feel the energy. Every polis wants to be the cultural capital, their festivals a stage for soft power. Remember those trade wars over amphorae? Now it's about whose tragedy makes you cry harder. You laugh softly, picturing a reality show called Greece's Got Talent, with Zeus as the grumpy judge. As you leave the festival, the torches flicker, casting shadows over cheering crowds. These cultural contests are Greece's brightest legacy, born from the same pride that fuels its wars. The rivalries you followed through mountains, markets, and battlefields shine here, turning division into art. But this brilliance can't last forever. You're ready to see how these proud cities stumble, their disunity dragging them toward decline. The end's coming, and it's not as pretty as a Sophoclean chorus. You're stepping away from the vibrant festival grounds now. The echo of lyres and cheering crowds fading as you wander toward a quieter, more somber landscape. The air feels heavier, the olive groves sparser, as if Greece itself is exhaling a weary sigh. You're tracing the decline of the city-states, where the rivalries, geographic, tribal, economic, religious, and cultural, that fueled their brilliance finally unravel them. The pride that birthed hoplites, tragedies, and oracles becomes their undoing, and you're here to witness the fall of a civilization too stubborn to unite. It's a slow fade, but it stings like a spear's graze. Picture yourself around 400 BCE, standing on a hill overlooking Athens, its Acropolis still proud but scarred from war. The Peloponnesian War, a brutal 27-year slugfest between Athens and Sparta, has just ended. A mainstream historical fact grounds this. Sparta's victory in 404 BCE, backed by its Peloponnesian League, crushed Athens' empire, forcing its surrender and dismantling its democracy for a time. You see Athenian ships burned to splinters in the Piraeus harbor, their once mighty navy a memory. The city's walls, so carefully built, lie in rubble. You feel the exhaustion. Decades of fighting over trade routes, alliances, and pride have bled Greece dry. It's like watching a family feud torch the whole house. Here's a quirky tidbit that quirks your brow. During the war, some Athenians hid their wealth by burying gold coins in pots, hoping to dig them up later. Spoiler, many didn't, leaving archaeologists a nice surprise centuries later. You chuckle, imagining a frantic merchant with a shovel, cursing his bad memory. Historians still argue whether the war's root cause was Athens' imperial overreach or Sparta's paranoia. Did greed doom the polis, or was it fear? You're betting both as you watch Spartans strut through Athens, their victory hollow amid Greece's shared ruin. Wander north to Thebes, and you see the decline deepen. Sparta's dominance doesn't last. By 371 BCE, Thebes humbles them at Leuctra, proving no polis stays king forever. But Thebes can't unite Greece either. You notice the pattern. Each city's too tied to its own identity, those tribal roots you saw ages ago. Athens rebuilds, but its democracy's shakier, its coffers empty. Corinth's ports grow quiet as trade shifts elsewhere. Even the oracle at Delphi, once Greece's spiritual pulse, loses clout as polis trust their own wits over prophecies. You smirk, thinking of modern companies collapsing from infighting. Same drama, fewer togas. By 338 BCE, a new shadow looms. Macedon, under Philip II. You stand at Chaeronea, watching his phalanxes, ironic, a Greek invention, crush a desperate Athenian-Theban alliance. The city-states, weakened by centuries of squabbling, can't match a unified kingdom. Philip's son, Alexander, will soon sweep through, turning Greece into a footnote in his empire. You feel the tragedy, not just defeat, but the loss of that fierce independence you've tracked through mountains, markets, and festivals. The polis rivalries made them brilliant but brittle, like a vase too fragile for its own weight. You laugh softly, picturing a Greek reality show called Who's the Best Polis, ending with everyone losing. As the sun sets, casting long shadows over the ruins, you sense the end of an era. The city-state's legacy, democracy, art, philosophy will endure, but their sovereignty won't. You've seen their rise through rugged terrain, tribal pride, and cultural glory. Now, their fall whispers a hard truth. Division creates, but it also destroys. Let the weight of those ancient stones settle now, as the breeze carries away the dust of fallen walls. You're no longer in Greece's fractured valleys, but somewhere softer, where the stars hum a gentler tune. The city-states, with their clashing spears and soaring plays, fade like a dream you'll revisit tomorrow. Their rivalries, their pride, it's all part of you now, a story etched in your mind's quiet corners. Close your eyes, let the hum of a distant fan wrap you in calm and drift into the night. Greece's ghosts will keep watch, their voices a whisper of battles and beauty, until you wake.